Hey, what up, people? Jay Izo back again. Yeah, how you doing today? Guess what it is, guys? I came across a video where a Caucasian lady just sharing her views on how she does not like the Chinese people in Africa. Like she was just angry that why are the Chinese in Africa? So she went for an event, obviously, and the host of the event have to like, why are you upset with the Chinese people in Africa? You're in Africa, the Westerner, the Asians, the Caucasian, all you guys have been in Africa. Now is the Chinese turn. So why are you saying you don't like the Chinese in Africa? And she's trying to, well, the Chinese are corrupt and blah, blah, blah. Yes, of course. We know the Chinese are corrupt. Our leaders in Africa are corrupt. And they brought in the Chinese because Chinese people are corrupt, without no doubt. And the same thing, I'm just praying that the same thing our forefathers did 400 years ago, that they brought in these so-called Western people with the religions of Jesus Christ, the Portuguese, the Americans, the British, for the belief of they have brought in the religions of Jesus Christ. I'm just praying that it's not going to happen again this time on our lifetime. It's the Chinese turn right now in Africa. You all can believe that. So I want you guys to watch this Caucasian lady at an event where she's expressing her views about the Chinese in Africa, why she doesn't like it. So the event host have to shut her down, like, you are not better than the Chinese in Africa. And moreover, the Chinese are doing something in Africa. They are investing, they're building roads, infrastructure, building bridges and whatever. The American, the British, the Portuguese, they didn't do all that. All what they did was coming to loot our resources. And at the end of the day, after the slavery, they dumped the black people on the island, on the plantation farm, wherever they can live there. So you all stay to watch this white lady and I will come back. But I think it's very funny for a white woman to be complaining about the Chinese people in Africa. Why is she in Africa too? Yeah? Why was her forefather was in Africa too? The same purpose, the same reason, that is why the Chinese people are also in Africa. Obviously, the Africa continent have over 50 or 60% of what the world is consuming today. And that is why everybody is taking advantage over Africa, because we have a corrupt leaders, corrupt system who are incompetent, who can't stand and defend their territories. We're still living by boundaries that the white people, the Westerners have created for us. We are supposed to be united Africa, united nation with one currency, one people, one military, one voice. But anyway, stay tuned and watch this white lady and I'll be right back.
They're in Africa. They're lending money to countries to build ports and different infrastructure.
To build what?
Port,
And
harbors.
what's wrong with that?
And, well, because...
Countries that need ports get ports.
But they're making people dependent on... I mean, I know, it's the same thing that we've done, which is
No, it's not.
horrible around the world.
They are far more humanistic than the United States ever was.
I've been very concerned lately about China. They are now all over Africa, buying things and investing over there and getting those countries dependent on them and supporting, non-democratic people.
Yeah? But they are non-interventionist. Absolutely non-interventionist in a way that Europeans, the West, has never managed to fathom. When it comes to the influence of China outside its borders, I have to say, firstly, it's quite remarkable that they don't seem to have any military ambitions. Secondly, Africa. I'll give you an example, a specific example. Ethiopia. 2004, because I happened to be there and I have some first-hand experience of it. They went into Ethiopia. I'll tell you why they went into Ethiopia, because they suspected there was oil. Because China is a major industrial power, but it lacks primary resources. Now, instead of going into Africa with troops, colonially, destroying the country, killing people like the West has done for the last 100 years, what they did was they went to Addis Ababa and they said to the government, we would like, we can see you have problems with your infrastructure, we would like to build some new airports, upgrade your railway system, create a telephone system, and rebuild your roads. And we'll do this all for free. No strings attached. We don't want anything from you. And they did. Why did they do it? Because this is soft power. Because because they knew that if oil is discovered, and it was discovered later, then, of course, the Ethiopian government will be much more open to Chinese oil companies coming there. They have never combined their investment with imperialistic. Can you imagine if that was a German company or an American company? That's why I'm saying I don't think you should worry.
Okay, I won't.
I just died laughing, hearing how she's expressing her feeling, her angers about why the Chinese people in Africa that are giving loan to Africans and building bridges. And so the event host is like, so what about it? The Chinese people, they are more humanistic than your so-called forefathers who invaded Africa and kidnapped our people and make them slaves. The truth is that what is the big deal about the Chinese being in Africa, and why is a Caucasian woman concerned about it? Yes, I understand, Chinese are corrupt. So when they come into Africa, they see that our African leaders are also corrupt, so they were able to manipulate, penetrate into them. Chinese are corrupt, there's no question about that, but they're giving loans to Africans. They're giving loans and building bridges, building schools, infrastructures. These are the things the Europeans failed to do, the Americans, the Portuguese, the British failed to do, because if they would have done it, I don't think there would have been room for Chinese people coming now in 2020s, coming to invade us with loans and money and stuff like that. Yeah? But anyway, just stay tuned, and I'm going to share with you again another video why these so-called Westerners, the Chinese and everybody is coming to Africa, because what? Africa has what it takes. Africa has 60% of what the world is using today, and that is why they keep coming to Africa. They keep coming to Africa, whereas we Africans that have those resources, we're not opportune to make use of them, except few individuals in Africa who are our leaders. Most of our leaders in Africa are the gatekeeper to the Westerners, and that is why you can see black people literally everywhere in the world. Even after the slavery, okay, now in the 21st century, you see black people just forcing themselves to leave Africa to go to a different country. There are black people in United Arab Nation. There are black people in Dubai doing housekeeping, house choices for people and getting many payments just because they can afford their lifestyle in Africa. Africa is blessed with everything, but a few individuals are in the resources, controlling African resources with the management and the family. So Africa is poor in some way, yeah, and that is why you see every black man is leaving their father's land to go for a greener pasture somewhere. But anyway, you also stay tuned, watch this clip, why Africa is being enticed by the world and why Africa is the target, why Africa is where everybody's running to. And I'm going to be sad to say this, which is going to be realistic. If a war is going to happen again, Third World War, I think it will happen within the Africa. You know why? Because the Chinese people are there, the Americans are there, the Great Britain are there, the Russians are there, the Portuguese are there, the Germans are there, and they all have their military base built in those African countries, except out of West Africa. The West Africa refused giving them the land to build their military bases, but other African countries has given them land to build their military bases, and they're all there. So if anything triggers, I think that's where they're going to attack themselves, and I think that is where the World War III most likely going to happen, within Africa. Because Africa are giving opportunity to these idiots to come into our country, enticing us with money, because our leaders are our fools and corrupt that could not take care of their resources and manage it to better the life of the people. Yeah, so strangers are coming in, giving peanuts, giving money. You can't believe it. International Monetary Fund, IMF, is giving loan to Africa. How do they think we can pay it? Because they know we have resources. They don't need you to pay back in cash. They need you to pay in kindness with the mineral resources you got in Africa. And that's why they're giving loans to our leaders. Yeah? So stay tuned, watch this presentation, and I will come back to the end. Thank you.
Africa is one of the most diverse continents on Earth, endowed with plenty of natural resources, economic opportunities, and a big market for consumer products. The continent of 54 nations, Africa is home to some of the fastest growing economies in the world and stands as one of the most attractive markets for foreign investors seeking business opportunities in emerging markets. The African economy is projected to reach a GDP of $29 trillion by 2050, from over $3 trillion, making Africa the second fastest growing economy in the world after Asia. While there are several ways to compare nations' wealth, one of the best methods is to evaluate each country's gross domestic product, GDP, which is the value of all the goods and services produced by a nation in a given year. In this video we are going to look at the 10 richest countries in Africa by GDP according to data provided by the IMF. Number 10, Ghana. Ghana is one of the largest economies in Africa. The West African nation has the second biggest economy in West Africa, and is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa. Ghana is the world's second largest cocoa producer behind Ivory Coast and Africa's biggest gold miner, producing over 100 metric tons of gold every year. A combination of a conducive business environment, committed and progressive government-private sector participation, political stability, transparent regulations, and a thriving private sector, are some of the reasons to Ghana's recent economic boom. About 3/5 of Ghana's GDP is derived from the services sector, 1/5 from agriculture, and industry contributing about 1/4, with its total GDP standing at $73.8 billion. Number 9, Tanzania. Tanzania is one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, and one of Africa's most attractive investment destinations. Tanzania has sustained 2 decades of sustained economic growth, being among the 10 fastest growing economies in Africa during the same period, with an annual average growth of 7%. In July 2020, Tanzania reached a major milestone, graduating from a low-income country to a middle-income country 5 years than predicted before. The East African nation has a GDP of about $77.5 billion, with agriculture, mining, tourism, manufacturing, livestock and fishing driving the Tanzania's economy. The country's political stability, natural endowments and strategic geographic position are just some of the few factors which has helped Tanzania to maintain its position as one of the biggest economies in Africa in the past few years. Number 8, Ethiopia. With an annual GDP growth of about 11% in the last 14 years, Ethiopia has enjoyed one of the fastest economic growth in the world in the past decade. The country's economic growth has been led by capital accumulation through public infrastructure investments and foreign direct investment, among other factors. Ethiopia's nominal GDP is about $105.3 billion. Agriculture sector, service sector, financial services, manufacturing, transport and tourism sectors contribute a large part of Ethiopia's economy, with its national airline Ethiopian Airlines, which is the biggest airline in Africa in terms of passengers carried, destinations served, fleet size and revenue, standing as a great example of the country's thriving transport sector. Number 7, Kenya. An East African country well known for its vast landscapes and wildlife is next on the list of Africa's richest countries by GDP. Kenya's economy has rebounded well from the disruptions caused by the pandemic, growing by 6.8% in the first quarter of 2022. This is according to Kenya's National Bureau of Statistics. The largest economy in East and Central Africa, Kenya's economy almost doubled in a period of 8 years, from $58.1 billion in 2014 to $114.6 billion in 2022. Kenya's major industries include agriculture, forestry, fishing, mining, manufacturing, energy, tourism, and financial services. Number 6, Angola. Angola, a vast country with a long coastline and central plateau. In the past few years, Angola's economy has suffered heavily from the effects of lower oil prices and production levels despite significant progress on macroeconomic stability and structural reforms. However, thanks to the recent surge in oil prices, the economy of the southern African nation has begun recovering. Crude oil sales accounts for more than 1/3 of Angola's economy, and 95% of its exports. Angola's nominal GDP is $124 billion. Number 5, Morocco. Morocco's economy is considered as a liberal economy by experts, governed by the law of supply and demand. Privatization in some sectors since 1980s has had positive results in Morocco's economy, helping the growth of its economy and infrastructure. The service sector accounts for just over half of the GDP, with industries sector consisting of mining, construction and manufacturing, contributing about a quarter of the country's GDP, and agriculture about 14% of Morocco's GDP. The North African country has a GDP of about $133 billion, making it the fifth largest economy in Africa. Number 4, Algeria. An economy dominated by export trade of petroleum and natural gas, Algeria is one of the largest economies in Africa. The economy of Algeria has primarily depended on hydrocarbons since 1960s when it began extraction of the mineral resources. Algeria is the world's sixth largest exporter of natural gas. Oil and gas account for almost 95% of export revenues and more than 30% of GDP. The economy of Algeria stands at $193.6 billion, making it the fourth biggest economy in Africa. Number 3, South Africa. The South African economy is essentially based on the private sector. Since the end of World War II, South Africa has established a well-developed manufacturing base, and has since then remained Africa's most industrialized nation. The most industrialized, technologically advanced, and diversified economy in Africa, South Africa has the third biggest economy in Africa, with a GDP of $426 billion. A unique combination of a highly developed first world economic infrastructure and a huge emergent market economy has given rise to a strong entrepreneurial and dynamic investment environment, and has made South Africa a gateway to emerging markets in Africa for many years. Number 2, Egypt. The recent surge in economic activity has set Egypt on track to achieve economic supremacy on the African continent. Egypt's economic growth has been strong and resilient since the economic reforms initiated in 2016, when Egypt began liberalization of the capital account, which attracted foreign investors into the country. The North African nation has witnessed a remarkable rise in retail market sales, and products influx from major international companies, attracting many international brands. Egypt has a GDP of about $435.6 billion. Number 1, Nigeria. Nigeria has stood as Africa's biggest economy since 2020, when it re-emerged as the continent's biggest economy. Africa's most populous nation and the seventh most populous nation in the world, Nigeria is a compelling investment destination endowed with plenty of natural resources and a big market for consumer products. The economy of Nigeria is a middle-income, mixed economy and emerging market, with expanding manufacturing, financial, service, communications, technology, and entertainment sectors. The Nigeria economy, which is $510 billion according to the IMF, is heavily dependent on the oil industry, which accounts for more than 90% of the country's total export earnings. There you have it. Those are the 10 richest countries in Africa.
Hey, thanks for staying by. Thanks for watching. And if you're a return subscriber, I would like to say thank you so much for following through. And if you're new to my channel, please kindly like, share, and then subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content and for more information. So basically on my channel I talk about religion, politics, and then share news around the world, because religions and politics is what the politicians have used to divide people, especially Africa where I come from. Religion and politics is a big issue. Yeah, it's a big issue, and the politicians are cashing out, while the pastors, the imam in the church, are also cashing out on the poor people because of their religion belief. They have been manipulated with the name of religion and stuff like that. But anyway, this is where I'm going to drop the curtain right now. Thank you for watching. Please like, more, share, view, and subscribe. Thank you. Big up, J Ezo. I'll see you next time. Thank you.